All right, good afternoon. I'll call to order this May 14th, 2019 workshop of the Powhatan County School Board. Madam Clerk, if you let the minutes reflect that Mrs. Emel, Mr. Cole, Dr. Jones and I are present this evening, and Mr. Kunka and Ms. Ayers are away on business. Hopefully we'll be joined by Mr. Kunka shortly. We have in front of us the draft agenda for the workshop. We have a quorum. Is there a motion regarding the agenda or any changes necessary?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve our agenda as presented.
All right,
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor of approving the agenda, please respond with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. That takes us to the public comment period for our workshop. This is an opportunity for individuals wishing to address the board to come forward and be heard. There is a time limit of 3 minutes per individual and 5 minutes per group, with a total time limit of 30 minutes. We would ask that speakers identify themselves by name and address, and please address your comments to the board as a whole, not to individual board members. Public comment period is open for our workshop this evening on May 14th, 2019. Once again, public comment period is open. All right, seeing no movement, I'll bring public comment period to a close. Dr. Jones, I believe we have some presentations this evening, sir.
We do, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. The first item is a presentation on a solar power purchase agreement. This is something that the board has been exploring for the last year and a half or even longer. We began an RFP process in January where we went out to the public and looked for proposals to come back and went through that process that Dr. Tibbs led. And we have selected a preferred partner to work with us on this solar PPA, and they are here to give a presentation today about what we are presenting. This is just information at this time, and we'll certainly take the board's questions and comments. And if there is the sentiment to go forward, we would certainly look at bringing this back in June for approval to move forward. Dr. Tibbs, I may have stolen all your thunder. If I did, I apologize, but feel free to add anything you need to.
It's all good. Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Jones. As he stated, we started this a couple of years ago. If the board will remember, we had a kind of a grassroots effort from the Science Olympiad students at Powhatan High School come forward in the spring of 2017. And we've circled back to this following the completion of our capital projects with the transportation maintenance facility and the middle school. And so we did an RFP sent out on January the 13th. Advertisements were placed in the Richmond Times-Dispatch on January 13th and January the 20th. 2 companies attended a pre-proposal conference, and then 2 complete proposals were received in response to that RFP. And then an evaluation committee received presentations from those 2 companies on March the 18th, choosing Sun Tribe Solar as hopefully the partner moving forward. Taylor Brown, who is a Chief Technical Officer with Sun Tribe Solar, is going to present specific information about this purchase agreement. Taylor? Yeah, it's right here.
Thank you, Jason. Good evening, afternoon. Appreciate everyone's time today to talk about this opportunity. We're really excited to explore the Powhatan County Schools solar PPA. I'll give a little bit of background on solar PPAs in general, and then we'll get into specifics on Powhatan, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. Want to address any questions that might be out there. With that, I'll get into the presentation here. So a little background on Sun Tribe. We are the largest PPA provider in the state of Virginia. We're based in Charlottesville, Virginia, and we focus specifically on the Virginia market. One unique thing about Sun Tribe is we're a turnkey provider, so not only are we providing the financing, we have full engineering in-house and construction teams that are going to see the project through the whole life cycle of the delivery. Big thing for us is safety. We work with school districts all over the state, working around campuses, and schools is our utmost importance to kind of make sure that the school's intentions are being upheld while we're delivering these projects. So we really put a lot of emphasis on that. So what is a PPA?
Excuse me, Taylor. Can we
yes.
get the presentation to move forward?
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry about that. So let me pause on this slide for a second. Largest provider in the state. We're really proud of that. And most of that is due to our vertical integration nature. Kind of hit on the financing, the engineering, and the construction. Engineering, most of us came from larger utility scale power generation. We came to Virginia specifically to kind of grow this market within the school systems. And then safety, that's a big one for us. And I kind of hit on that before, but really want to iterate on that. So what is a solar power purchase agreement? So right now, there's a pilot program in place with Dominion Energy that has a cap of 50 megawatts. So these programs would be slotted within that program. And it enables third-party financing for a group such as SunTribe to actually own and operate the system with no upfront capital cost to the school district. We would actually sell you the power. The electricity, in this case, we're giving you about a 7% discount to what you're currently paying Dominion. And I'll get into it a little bit further, but we're also going to include a new roof at the Powhatan Elementary School as part of the package. So not only are you saving money kind of day one with no capital outlay, you're getting a new roof out of the deal, which we're really excited about. Maintenance is fully borne by SunTribe. Our revenues come from actually the systems generating the electricity, and then we just invoicing you on a monthly basis. So you'll get a small bill from Dominion, as you always would, and then you'll get an invoice from SunTribe for the remainder of that electricity. So in this case, we'll be doing roof mounts. All will be ballasted and standing seam. So in either configuration, there's no roof penetrations. I'll talk about roof warranties in a minute. But these are really 35-year assets. So our number one concern is to ensure that the integrity of the roof is maintained before, during, and after we deploy these systems. So the roof warranties. One of the most important considerations that needs to be taken when deploying products on pre-existing roof is doing a thorough check of the existing OEM membrane. So we'll actually come out with whoever put that roof down, whether it's Firestone, Carlisle. We'll do an inspection. If there's any repairs that are going to be required, we'll make sure that those are completed prior to installing the solar. We want to make sure that we're working with a good membrane. The racking configuration will actually be pre-approved by the membrane manufacturer, so we'll work with them. We've worked with all the major membrane manufacturers, so we actually know who those contacts are. We'll make sure that the racking solution is pre-approved by them. And then once the system is installed, we'll have that OEM rep come back out, do an inspection, and make sure that system was installed to their guidelines, to their tech spec. And then at that point, they will sign a new recertification of your existing roof warranty, right? Ultimately, that document is utmost importance for Powhatan, because that's what is going to be contractual if there's an issue in the future. So we're really we put a lot of effort into making sure that this process is followed with all of our construction managers. One really cool aspect that we've seen with these systems is kind of the educational side. So we'll actually partner with a group called the NEED Project. They're a nonprofit out of DC. And we will actually, SunTribe will just cut Powhatan County Schools a grant to fund the education of teachers, so that these teachers can actually integrate this new technology, this energy source into their curriculum. They're actually based on Virginia SOL's Common Core. We've seen great success with other counties that have done this. And it's just really cool to really see the students get engaged on like a real project that's on their roof, or it's out in the field. In this case, it'd be on the roof. I've actually taught several classes after installing a system, and the engagement that we get, the questions and answers that come out of it is really rewarding. So just depending on the size of the system, we'll work with you to get the grant as necessary to get all the teachers that you would like to get educated on this. Suntribe will cover 100% of that cost. So this is very small because it is a 35-year deal. What I'd like to draw your attention to is kind of the year one. So to start off, you're currently paying your utility 9.3 cents per kilowatt hour, and we're going to be selling you that same electricity at 8.57 cents per kilowatt hour. Big note is we're gonna re-roof the flat membrane part of the Powhatan Elementary School. We will be putting some panels on the standing seam, but at this point, only the membrane needs to be replaced. So, you know, we're locking you in at a pretty significant discount right off the bat.
Taylor, could I interrupt you right there?
Yes,
if I
sir.
could, just for the board and the public's, that portion of the roof at Powhatan Elementary is probably our #1 item on our CIP to be replaced after we take out the items that we're already doing with Train. And when Suntribe came and presented to us and we didn't see any solar arrays on that portion, we asked them to go back and figure in the costs of replacing that roof. Could we figure this into this so that we could accomplish something in our CIP without having to go to the county and asking for extra money? So I think that bears pointing out to you and as well to the public, because that's a big ticket item that we're now going to be able to hopefully do through this process instead of obligating county funds to accomplish that CIP item.
Yeah, I appreciate you kind of hitting on that. You know, those are, you know, well over $200,000 in funds that can be reallocated, you know, to more important items for the school. We know that every dollar counts, right? And so not only from the savings standpoint, but also kind of reallocating those capital funds can be tremendously valuable. One other note is that there are other membrane roofs that we would be looking to deploy solar on, and we've already included in our price to remove our solar arrays when those new roofs need to be deployed. So they range from, you know, year 10 to year 15 when some of these other schools are going to need new roofs. So we want to make sure that you're not sitting there stuck with a solar array on your roof. You got to put a new membrane down, and there's some extra costs associated with that. That's a cost that Suntribe has already baked in to this proposal. So want to make sure that is outlined. Other than that, before I kind of move off of this slide, are there any questions? I'm going to get into the sites specifically after this slide, but I just want to kind of open it up to any questions at this point that might be present.
Questions for our presenter? Mrs. Emel.
So when you said that there might be repairs needed before you start, so who will be tasked, or who will pay for that?
Yeah, good question. So to date, we've never had any major repairs required before deploying, but if there were a repair, that's typically a cost borne by the school. If there is a cost and it's significant, we can actually include that in the PPA. The reality is you know, if it's under $5,000, which generally it is to get someone out to do a repair here and there, Suntribe's just going to bear that cost. We have a good relationship with most of these roofers. So, you know, we haven't actually run into that to date, so we don't have any precedent that there would be any major costs associated with that.
Okay, and did you say you're going to replace the entire Powhatan Elementary roof, or just the areas that we're using?
Good question. So I'm going to flip to this slide here. So you'll notice that if you're familiar with the roof, the flat membrane section is sort of in the middle, and all the surrounding areas are all standing seam. So we're only going to be replacing the flat membrane sections.
So it's that blue, I'm sorry, that blue section to the far west of the building, that square right there is the flat section of the roof. The rest of it is metal standing seam roof. that is in good shape, but that's the section of the roof that we were most concerned about because it's 30 years old.
Yeah, it's end of life.
And
Yeah.
really is something that we needed to have replaced anyway.
Where the gym is that it? The big piece?
It's cafeteria and gym, yes, ma'am.
Okay, uh-huh.
Yeah, so there's actually a section of roof where we don't currently show any solar panels that will also be replaced. It's the little flat membrane section over to the southwest.
I don't see what, do you see what?
Is it this
it's too
area
tiny for me to
here?
see the difference.
Is that what we're talking
It's
about?
that area.
The flat areas are blue, is that correct?
Yeah.
So just this part is what they're gonna,
That's where the
Place.
solar arrays
Oh,
are
there
going.
we go.
It extends a little bit further out down to the south of that.
If you look at the screen right here, the flat membrane section is, I'm just gonna encompass it with that's the flat membrane section.
oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
That's not the same thing we're looking at.
Mm-mm.
And then there's another section right here, which we're not currently showing solar, but we're gonna go ahead and replace that one as well.
Okay, so that's not the,
Right.
the cafeteria or the,
No,
but that's still,
That's
that's
the-
the area that needs to be replaced?
Correct.
Okay, okay. All right, and I guess another question, I'll wait for that. Go ahead. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Cole?
I'm looking at your chart on the previous page, which is very small, and we can see it because we
Right.
are able to look at it a whole lot more from a closer distance, but the first year's cumulative savings of $292,000, that's for the new roof, I'm assuming that's built into that, is that
Mhm.
correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And tell me, you know, how the annual savings increase year by year? What's driving that, you know?
Great question. So, one of the big drivers for the value of these projects is that we've done a lot of analysis on historical utility rates, and in Virginia, the trailing historical rate rise is about 3.08% per year, and in this case, this PPA rate would be locked in at 1%. So if you see your host utility rate, that's going to increase at the historical rate of about 3%, and we're locked in at 1%. So
So-
that delta over time, you're going to see more and more savings.
So the PPA rate on that second column is your rate, and you're telling me that's going up annually 1% per year. And you're assuming the Dominion rate will go up about 3% based on history.
That's
So
correct.
that drives the higher savings on the other side. So based on this 35-year timeline that you have here, we're looking at $3,300,000 thereabouts of savings. And so you get your money back, there are payments to you so there's no capital money that goes back to you. That money, capital improvements that you do are, they're within the rates, you get that money back within the rates we pay you for electricity.
Right. These projects can most similarly be related to commercial real estate. You know, we're actually securing long-term fixed rate debt. In this case, it'd be 25-year fixed rate debt. So we're able to, financing is the name of the game. We're able to push that financing cost out over 25 years, which is what enables us to kind of drive that PPA rate down as low as we can. And in this case, you know, you're getting some CapEx kind of right out of the gate. One thing to note is that the high school is not included on this first phase, if you will. So that 3.3 million in savings is only for the 4 schools, with significant potential savings coming from that school as well.
And why are we not doing the high school?
Because of the age of the roof. Sun Tribe wanted us to replace the roof on the high school before they added solar arrays because of the age of that roof, and we don't have that money. We don't even have that as a CIP project at this point, so we just said, you know, we could move forward with the other 4 schools, but until we added that to the CIP and saw that as a need,
Okay.
then we wouldn't be looking at PHS as part of this project.
And just to kind of hit on the kind of the contractual configuration, there'll be a master PPA, and then you nest system agreements for each site underneath of that. So in the future, you know, a year or two down the road, if you wanted to look at the high school, it's easily nestable with kind of within that construct. So from a financing angle, it's really, I mean, you'll have already seen the savings on these 4 schools, so you would be able to make a very educated decision like, yeah, this is great, no, this is not great. We're already seeing repeat customers from other school districts. Happy to connect you with anyone there. I think Dr. Jones has spoken with several. But, you know, we're in the business of partnerships, right? We're going to own and operate this system on your building for, you know, over the course of decades. So repeat business is really important for us.
And on your slide with the picture of Powhatan Elementary, you've got annual production of 543,689 kilowatts, and that equals an offset of 76%. So you're telling me that 76% of our electricity costs will be covered by solar. Am I reading that correctly?
That is correct.
Okay.
One note is that we have factored in the performance contract savings into these offset numbers. So just so that you know, we did a holistic evaluation. There's not going to be a case where we're producing more than your building would actually end up using once those efficiencies kick in. So this is a holistic view.
Okay. And is that about the figure you aim for when you're designing it?
I mean, we like to go for 100%, you know, because for every kilowatt hour we produce, you know, we're saving the school district money. So 100% is what we target. In this case, you know, we were just constrained from a roof standpoint. And, you know, so 100% is what we'd love to hit.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I didn't mean to
No,
call
you're
the
doing
questions
fine.
there.
You're doing fine, Mr.
Thank
Cole.
you.
All right, I have a couple, Mrs. Emo, unless you have anything you'd like to ask at this point.
Well, I just want to make sure.
It's a small group up here this evening, so before I
Okay.
get started, if you want to go
Okay.
ahead.
Well, even though we're not doing the high school, if we could still include the teacher, Mr. Gibbs, and the students, or
Oh, absolutely.
in some
And
way?
Mr. Gibbs actually sat in on the presentations. He was part of the selection committee, so he
Oh,
has
good.
participated in the process. And
Okay.
certainly the educational aspects of this, the high school students would still be able to participate in.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
One thing I do want to hit on there that relates to kind of the educational pieces, there will be a public dashboard that'll show the real-time production of the system, which is really cool. But you can also extract historical data. You can pull it down in a number of file formats, Excel being the easiest to, you know, compare to weather patterns, you know, doing graphs, looking at how in the winter versus in the summer, you know, those correlations exist, which can open up quite a range of science projects.
All right, I've got a couple questions for you, sir. So, and these are in no particular order, but a few moments ago you said that your production, did I understand you say you anticipate producing 76 or meeting 76% of our power needs at those buildings off of the solar arrays that you're going to have in place?
So let me maybe I just walk through the rest of these sites. So 76% for Powhatan Elementary, 69% at Pocahontas,
Okay,
50% at Flat Rock,
okay.
and 72% at Powhatan Middle.
All right, so is that an average on an annual basis, or where's that number coming
Yep,
from?
that's over a 12-month period. You know, we're looking to offset on a 12-month period that much. So in this case, Powhatan Middle, we're going to be offsetting 72% of your total kilowatt hour usage over the course of 12 months.
Okay. And this is certainly a question for you, but it could be for Dr. Jones as well. What other school districts in this area have a relationship like this with this company?
You want to take that, Taylor? And then
Yeah.
I'll follow up with who I've spoken to.
Totally. So it grows every day. But Arlington County, Middlesex County, Westmoreland County, Fluvanna County, Henrico County. We have several in LOI stage, being Louisa County,
What's
Hanover
LOI?
County.
What's LOI stage?
Oh, sorry, letter of intent,
Oh,
which is,
okay.
we're just kind of negotiating the final aspects of the contract.
And I've spoken to the superintendents in Middlesex, and I believe they were the first county in Virginia to offset 100% of their power.
Yep.
So they jumped in with both feet and
They did.
have done a good job there. They've been very satisfied. Theirs has been up and running for,
About a year
yeah.
now, yeah.
And then I spoke to the superintendent in Fluvanna as well. They're very excited. Their project's just, I think, in an installation phase right now.
We're, engineering phase right now.
But
Yep.
they're really excited about it, and they're putting it on their schools. So I talked to those two superintendents a couple different times, most recently at our last conference, just to see how the project's growing and their happiness with it. And they both were very, very excited about it, especially Middlesex, because of kind of the reaching that threshold is pretty exciting to do from a community standpoint as well.
Yeah, and just to kind of hit on, the financial drivers here, the technology has really come leaps and bounds in just the last, 18 months, to be honest. 2 years ago, the numbers that we're hitting today would not have been attainable then because the solar panel costs and the inverter costs were just a lot higher. So, up until, a year and a half ago, it was a price premium product, and it really just kept folks from doing it. The numbers got a pencil for it to make sense. You're seeing, all the utility players, Dominion, we're actually building several large projects for Dominion ourselves. And we're able to kind of take that, utility scale power generation and bring it straight to your roof. And that's why the pricing is attractive as it is. The technology has come a long way.
Do you anticipate the technology will continue to develop as it has in the past, 20 years?
Yeah, so I don't have it on this particular slide, but if you kind of look at the trajectory of solar, it's declined precipitously, over the last 10 years, and we're kind of seeing it flatten out. It's kind of exponential, and now every cent helps, right? But we're not going to see the leaps and bounds over the next 3 years like we did over the last 3. We're kind of hitting this inflection point where most of the production is becoming automated. So we had this ramp up in companies building machines to build solar panels, and those are now mainstream, and that's what really drove the cost down. We're seeing a lot more manufacturing ramp up in the United States because of that automation, which we're really excited about. But because these are such a long-term, low-risk power generating assets, we don't intend to come out and swap the panels in the future, right? We're locking in that financing and just creating those savings for the life of the project.
So, so talk a little bit, if you would, please, about that. So are the panels yours or are they ours? And at what point do they transfer if they remain yours? What's the maintenance look like? So if something happens to that array because of, a natural event, something happens and we have several that are broken, damaged, whatever, how's the maintenance on that work? Who supports that on a long-term basis?
Right.
Why don't you address those right at this point?
Good question. So there is a 30% federal tax credit that's currently in place through the end of 2019. So we're kind of at this nexus point of, a tax credit that was put in place to jumpstart an industry. It did, and we're kind of feeling the value of that as it ramps down. It's going to step down over the next 4 years. It's going to stair step down year over year. So we're kind of right at the end of still the full tax credit value, but the technology is there. So we will own all of the equipment. We'll be harvesting that tax credit, which is how we're kind of getting to that low PPA rate. So because we own the system, we fully insure it. We'll add Powhatan County Schools as an additional insured on our umbrella. Because we own and operate assets all over the state, we have a very robust insurance policy, which all of these projects nest underneath. So we'll fully insure it. If there was a hail event, let's say, right, that were to damage any panels, we have a full asset management team that all they do is monitor our existing operating facilities. If there's any issues, they're going to get an email alert pretty much instantly. And we'll dispatch a team out as quick as possible to assess the damage and replace panels as necessary. From a hail, right? Hail is one of the more common issues that would arise. these panels can handle 1-inch hail at 70 miles an hour. That's just kind of an industry standard spec, so it's actually tempered glass, incredibly durable. I mean, we've deployed upwards of 8,000 panels, and we've had one that was dead on arrival. So the reliability is pretty tremendous from these panels now. So, you know, from a maintenance question, we love this particular, you know, PV photovoltaic because there's no moving parts, right? There's the only moving part. Some inverters have a computer fan that kick on when they get hot. Some are actually moving away from that to just natural convection. So very steady state. You know, it's the panels, it's wires to an inverter, and then it's an inverter connected straight into your electrical system. So from a maintenance standpoint, we'll come out and do an annual inspection once a year, just to make sure that, you know, something, even the system is producing as it should. We'll come out and do a visual just to make sure that something hasn't, you know, happened. But typically that doesn't turn up any issues, but we like to come out and do a check once a year on it.
Dr. Jones?
Why not?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Could I, if I wouldn't mind, if I could ask you, please come to the podium and just share with us your name, sir.
Sure. Rob Crotty, also with SunTribe.
Good
Just
evening.
one thing that might help as you're thinking about maintenance and as you're thinking about ways that we preserve the system. You know, we sort of live by that John Wooden axiom: if you don't have time to do it right, how are you going to have time to do it over? So most of our company are engineers and construction managers and construction folks. And keeping that all in-house means that when we install and design the system, it's installed properly to begin with, which helps eliminate a lot of the potential maintenance issues down the road. If you've designed a system poorly, things malfunction, we keep all of that in-house so that you know that you're partnering with us and you know who's doing all of the work there, so that ultimately you don't see problems down the road because it's been handled sort of upstream. Something to think about as you have that sort of maintenance hat on, which can be helpful. That was all from me.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Crotty.
If I could add, Mr.
Dr.
Chairman,
Jones.
that aspect of SunTribe is one why the committee felt like they were the best, besides the product and their experience in the field, having all of these services, the financing, the maintenance and installation, the engineering all in one place in one company was a big reason why SunTribe was selected. The other vendor that we had, it was 3 different companies coming to the table, one doing the financing, one doing the maintenance and installation, one doing the engineering and production. And we could foresee an instance where people would start pointing at each other. And it's not our problem, it's their problem.
Right.
So that's why one of the main reasons why SunTribe was the successful vendor that came out of this process, because everything is under one roof in terms of who we would contact. And they own it, they maintain it. At the end of the 25-year lease.
Yep, and that was one thing that Mr. Chairman had asked. We do give you the purchase option if you'd like. We can set that point. Typically, it's at year 26. We give you, full voluntary option to purchase the system. If you don't want to, we'll continue to own and operate it. But that's just kind of another perk that you can leverage in the future if you'd like.
All right. Are there, and I understand we are having a discussion this evening about a potential path forward.
Correct.
So in the discussions and in your work at this point, are there any sort of hidden costs to us in terms of, as a school system, preparing to have this take place?
No, we really, Mr. Johns and Dr.
And I'm not suggesting you're hiding it from
No,
us.
no,
I
no,
just
no,
mean
no.
not
Yeah, no, it's
not
a good
within the scope
question.
of this presentation.
No,
So-
we've had several conversations. I know Dr. Tibbs has had several conversations with SunTribe. We've even gone down the what if alley of, say there's, a problem with a roof leak at Powhatan Middle that's underneath one of the solar arrays. Well, what do we do? Well, we may have to move some of those panels. Well, SunTribe is committed to at least once a year coming in, removing whatever panels they need to for free. So, we don't have that happen a lot where we would have to do major roof work, but we even looked at something like that. Could that be a potential cost? Because we don't have the manpower, the expertise to do that. But SunTribe has agreed to write that into the PPA agreement. So there are no costs for us. There are savings for us. There are some very strong educational opportunities for us. there's an opportunity for us to get a CIP project done through financing through this that we found very appealing. So I only see upside. There's risk in anything that you do, but certainly, and I think that's why this has become so popular with school districts across the state.
Okay. All right,
I have
Mrs. Emo.
another question.
Yes, ma'am.
When you're talking about, what if there was like a disaster, like a hurricane or a tornado, where, some of them actually flew off and yada, yada. So does that affect the day-to-day operation until they're fixed?
Good question. So the solar will operate in what's known as parallel to the grid. So, and Dr. Tibbs hit on this. There is a process in place currently in Virginia called retail net metering, which is another huge reason why we're able to do this. So let's say, for example, in the middle of the summer where you might not be having a lot of load inside the building and the solar is producing a lot. You're going to be producing way more electricity than the building is consuming at that particular moment. That extra electricity is actually going to flow back to the grid, and you're going to get a credit on your bill for that amount of power. So that's how we can size these things so that the generation doesn't have to match the usage. So you'll never actually know whether, right now we could have solar on this building and you wouldn't know whether you're getting half of it from solar and half from Dominion. It's seamlessly flowing back and forth between the two power sources. And that's all, we can thank the inverters. They're all, we refer to as smart inverters now, and they'll just sync right to the voltage and the frequency of the grid. And when the sun shines, they push amperage, and when a big cloud comes over, their amperage will draw down. So you'll never actually see any interruption. If there was an issue with the solar, you'll never notice. We'll come out, right? We'll troubleshoot it. But there will be no operational impacts to any of the schools when these systems are running. To speak to like a massive event where the system were ripped off the roof, God forbid, that would be covered under our property insurance. And if there, unfortunately, if there were damage to, a car, that would also be covered under liability. So we would actually umbrella any issue that would occur at a site.
Okay, thank you.
All right, other questions at this point? All right, sir, you want to continue?
So this is it. I want to show you the 4 sites, and we can look at any of them that you'd like to. But overall, that's it. I did want to hit on, we've had an intern working for us for many months, Amelia Thomas, who is actually a student here at Powhatan. And she grew up here. She was actually, part of the development process. She kind of helped, looked at some of the schools, looked at some of the energy bills. So it's really cool. She was super excited to hear that, Powhatan wanted to get solar, and that, we were able to kind of make that a reality. So she wasn't able to make it today, but she just graduated from UVA, econ major, moving out to Denver. But she was really excited about the project. So.
Do we remember her?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good.
Played tennis with my
I
daughter.
talk to her fairly often, but you can't keep her in Virginia. She's going to California or something.
Yeah, yeah.
We tried.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
We had an offer for her, but she wanted to travel, so we're excited for her.
All right, so other questions or comments?
Just a
Mr. Cole.
comment, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, as someone who is very concerned with their energy use and the way we generate energy and the negative effects that often occur of generating energy, I'm very excited by this. I would like to be like Middlesex and eventually have 100% of our energy, the capability to produce 100% by solar power. So I'm looking forward to the next step in this process, and I appreciate the hard work that Mr. Tibbs and Dr. Jones and Mr. Johns and the other folks have done in researching this. I'd heard a little bit about Fluvanna's process a few years, I guess about a year and a half or so ago, and so I'm really excited that we're doing it.
Okay. Mrs. Emo, any last comments or questions for the presenter?
I'm good, thank you.
I just have one, and I think I see the answer to this, but I want to make sure while you're there at the podium. Is there any circumstance in which this would cost us more on an annual basis than what we pay today?
No. I mean, the rates, effectively, your current utility rates would have to plummet over the next couple of years for the PPA rate to be above, what your current, what the host utility is charging, which, considering how low natural gas pricing is right now, most coal units are retiring. Nuclear will, effectively kind of stay where it is. Really, the only way for pricing to go is up. If gas prices were really high, I think that would be a different story, but gas prices are very low right now. So I think it's a great hedge against future energy costs.
Certainly appears to be a way for us to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollar here in Powhatan County. So at this point, Dr. Jones, Mr. Tibbs, Dr. Tibbs, rather, what we need to do is decide, do we wish to move forward with further discussions? Is that correct?
Yeah, at this point, we're ready to move forward. We just wanted to bring this to the board since it's been a while since you've heard about this, give you an update on where we are, and we will, if the board has some consensus for us to continue working on the final PPA agreement, we'll keep working on that, and then look to bring it to you in June for approval.
Well, we don't have another board meeting before you're speaking of the meeting in the beginning of June, is that right?
Yes,
All right, so we have 3 of the 5 members here this evening.
correct.
All right, so we have a quorum, but certainly we're missing 2 of our members this evening. Any concerns with moving the issue forward based on what we've heard this evening?
I'm concerned they're not here, but I think between Dr. Jones and Dr. Tibbs, they can get the information they need.
Yeah.
I'm sure that Dr. Tibbs
There's one on right now.
would be willing to sit down with any of us individually if we have questions. I do think that it's important that we do let the county supervisors know that we are looking at this. So if you can communicate that to Mr.
And I
Voorhees.
have done that. I've sent that to Mr. Voorhees so that he's aware that
Okay.
we're doing the presentation tonight, and I sent that presentation to him. I believe they've also investigated this option as well, so.
Yeah, I know there was some mention of it at one of our meetings, but
And I know their structures are not quite like ours.
Correct.
But do you know the status of their discussions?
I don't at this point, but I can find out and let you know.
Okay. Well, I think Mr. Coles, I think your advice is well taken, that certainly if the other 2 members have concerns, they have an opportunity to speak directly with Dr. Jones and gather some more information before the June meeting. And at that meeting, what we're going to simply do is then look again at the information you're going to bring forward for us. Is that correct?
At that point, we would hope to be able to move forward
And
with
act on it if we choose.
approving, right,
Right.
correct.
All right. Mrs. Emel, any concerns?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Is that
Thank
all
you.
need?
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you, Taylor.
I appreciate it, Board. Dr. Jones.
Thank you.
Have a good evening, sir. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Kunka, sir.
hello.
You need a second, or you want us to go ahead and move forward? Okay.
All right. Go ahead, Dr. Jones.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Kunka. Our next presentation is on a school climate and working conditions survey. Dr. Alejandro has compiled some results and a summary of those results for the board, and we'll give you some background on this survey and where it came from and how we administered it. Dr. Alejandro?
Great. I'm just glad I don't have to say photovoltaic at all in my presentation today.
No doubt.
So, as Dr. Jones said, we did
Dr. Owen, could I stop
Yes,
you
sir.
just one second? If you would just make sure, please, the minutes reflect that we've been joined by Mr. Kunka just prior to the presentation on the climate survey. Thank you very much. Dr. Alejandro, and I had to pronounce your last name, and I apologize for mispronouncing it. Dr. Alejandro, please proceed.
Great, thank you. So, as Dr. Jones said, we did a school climate and working conditions survey, and we have done surveys in the past, but I wanted to talk a little bit about how this was different than previous surveys. So the purpose of this year's survey was twofold. As you know, we adopted a strategic plan last fall, and one of the goals of the strategic plan was to identify ways to create key performance indicators that would determine whether or not we were meeting our key performance objectives of that strategic plan. And so one of the key performance indicators that we had identified was to do surveys of staff and students. So this survey that I'm going to discuss today met that objective. Also, the Commonwealth of Virginia has done surveys of students in the past, but they wanted to do a working conditions survey that addressed what was going on with teachers and staff members in individual schools and across divisions. And so this survey also met that objective. We implemented this. We first saw it actually last fall. The state gave us the questions in advance, asked for some information for review of the questions, and then they put it out for administration. We had any time during the spring term to do that, and we determined that it would be best to do it in January and February, so we administered it at each of our schools. It was voluntary, it was anonymous, and our participation rates varied because it was voluntary and anonymous, and you can see those participation rates. It was administered at grades 4 and 5 at the elementary level, 6 through 8 at the middle school. It was only required of eighth graders. We asked our 6th and 7th graders to take it as well, and then for the 9th through 12th graders. So participation rates range from 57 to 100% for students, staff 90 to 100%, and teachers 67 to 100%. And staff was generally administration, instructional assistants. That would be who staff was comprised of for that survey. I have a lot of information here about how the analysis worked at each level, and I'll give you the opportunity to look at this on your own. But I do want to say that each of the schools, we talked about how they might want to analyze their results, and then they made a plan that was specific to their school building, but there were some common elements. So each of the schools reviewed it by their administrative team. They also looked at it as a leadership team, which could include more than just a principal and assistant principal. They shared it out at one or multiple staff meetings, as well as provided the full surveys to their staff members. They all had, each of their principals compiled some information and shared that with some of the leadership at the division level. And then they are now using that information to determine next steps for planning for improvement in the areas that they found there were areas for opportunities. At the secondary level, a similar process was used. It's a bigger staff, so some of those steps took a little bit longer or took a little bit different shape than they did at the elementary level. Dr. Martin at the middle school had identified a protocol to use that many of the schools used as part of that, and it's linked within this presentation if anyone wants to review it. The high school incorporated some different committees. They used the VTSS committee, the PBIS committee, as a way to analyze the results of both surveys. I do want to point out that this creates baseline data for us that we will be able to use for comparison in future years to see how we're meeting our goals of the strategic plan. And when we took all of these surveys in totality, there were some common themes that came up at across all 5 schools. Certainly each school has individual things that they need to work on or want to work on, but some of the common themes were across the board. Staff and students said that our schools are positive environments, and they felt that their environments were safe. They also noted across all 3 levels that teachers have high expectations within the division, and that we have a strong physical plant, provide appropriate materials and technology for instruction. Some concerns that were raised across the board were bullying. There were perceptions, high perceptions of bullying that were not in alignment with the incidents and the experiences that were reported for bullying. So those perceptions were high, whereas the incidents and the experiences were reported as low. The teachers rated their instructional practices higher than the students did in many cases, and the teachers asked for more professional development. So those were some of the common themes that came out of the survey. What we will do with this information, as I mentioned, it was a baseline that we have now created, that we will administer this survey year over year so we can see how some of these things change based on the plans that we make. We will use the results at each school for summer planning in a variety of ways. We're going to implement strategies that are identified in that planning at each of the schools. We also have just this week received state results, so we now can do a comparison with our results as a division to other schools within the state and take a look at those.
And region, so we'll have regional results for Region 1 and state results that we've just gotten in the last day or so. So we'll
Good.
start reviewing those and comparing those. First look is that we are above or at both the regional and the state level in terms of percentage of people satisfied on all of these different metrics. So I didn't see anything that jumped out at me as a concern at first glance. In fact, I thought it looked pretty good for how we look compared to our regional and state colleagues.
And then the other item that we would like to do is to identify a comparable parent survey. Well, that was not specifically mentioned in the strategic plan. I think that would fill out the remainder of the survey results so that we can have an accurate picture of how we're providing services for all of our stakeholders.
Mr. Chairman, I think
Dr.
one other
Jones.
thing that I think is the next step is, this is the first year that the state has done this particular survey, both for teachers and students, and we have given feedback to the state on the survey. As with any survey, there are some questions that could be worded differently. The length of the survey could be a concern, so we've each of the principals has shared some of that information with the state from their particular surveys, and we've shared things division-wide. One example is the bullying question. It's asked two different ways to both students and teachers. The first way is bullying a problem at my schools? And we saw that was a higher percentage. But then later in the survey, they asked the students and the teachers, I have witnessed bullying in my school. Those numbers were much lower. So sometimes it's the way you ask the question that can get you the results that you may or may not want. So we've sent that feedback to the state. It's allowed us to then look at the differences between the two ways those questions are asked. And there's some other questions that are third person versus first person and some of those things that we've given some feedback. So hopefully we'll get a stronger survey next year out of that.
Questions or comments?
Okay.
Mrs. Engel.
Well, I'm glad we're addressing the bullying because I noticed that throughout as well. When I talk to parents, they say they don't want to bring it up. They feel it's better they don't bring it up, and it's hard to encourage them to bring it up. And when I say that I think it's important, call your principal, talk to your principal. Your principal doesn't allow this, and it's hard to convince them that repercussions aren't going to happen, I guess. So I guess there's that added piece too. And the one thing that stuck out too is the policy directives are
Yes.
improving our education system. They didn't like that. And, so like, is that us? Or
Right.
is that the state? Or is
And
that?
that's one of those questions we sent back to the state. Is that are they talking about federal mandates? Are they talking state? Are they talking the school board?
Yeah.
Are they talking the administration? And I think that's a question that was poorly worded that can be interpreted lots of different ways.
Right, because I don't want to be a problem for the
Right.
teachers and staff of our schools if it
Right.
applies to us. So that concerned me. And then I noticed at Flat Rock, student behavior seemed to be a problem, or perceived to be a problem. And that's all I have.
And we shared at the elementary level, so the results, or at least the summary of the results, were shared among all three schools, so they could see if there was some anomaly between their school and
Oh.
another school. They were able to see those results and then pick the brain of the other principal, or
Uh-huh.
see if there's something different that's going on, so that, and same at the secondary level. So that was, it's valuable data for us to have. Like Dr. Alejandro said, it's the first time we've done it on a wide-scale basis. We've surveyed students in the past, but it certainly gives us some room to address some concerns. Board members have all of the surveys in executive content. We did not put that in public because there's some identifiable information on there for students and staff. So, but you have all the surveys there if you would like to review them, if you haven't had a chance to, and if you have any other questions or concerns, feel free to let me know.
All right, other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Gold.
I think it's it's a good source of data. It's one source of data that we'll look at in those key performance indicators. There were some things, as I read through individual schools, and I've not had a chance to read through every school, but the schools that I did read through, there are some things that are concerning but not surprising. You know, and you know, I too am concerned about the length of the survey. If we ask kids to do a 100-question survey every year, what's the reliability going to be, and how many students are going to participate year after year with 100 questions.
And the feedback that we've given the state, not just us, but divisions across the state, is to do this biannually, so every 2 years, to give, because we need time to address what the concerns are and try to make a difference in them, and doing it every year we think is overkill and could lead to some survey fatigue. So hopefully we'll see this every other year.
That's a good idea.
My last comment is, I assume at some point this information, some of the results of this are going to be shared with the students, so they'll know that that we've gotten the data and that we're reacting with that data, because I think it's important that they believe that they've been heard.
That's a good point. We'll work on that.
Yes, and I would say that was a strong concern from the faculty at each school, that they wanted to see the specific information. They wanted that transparency, and that was meaningful for them to be able to see the true results, not a summary of results that was created by administration. They could see the actual results, and each of the faculties were provided copies of the survey.
Good.
All right, other questions or comments? I guess I would just make a comment. I'm troubled by the theme about the bullying, and the perception of that is particularly troubling if that is how it is perceived. I'm glad to see that the data doesn't support that, and I would certainly be disappointed if it did. But I think if that's the perception, and I'm sure you're thinking about ways you can try to educate us and the students and the faculty a little bit, because the only way to address the perception is really with facts.
Yep.
So, and I would be interested to know sort of what ideas you bring forward about how you can do that, because it certainly seems to be a topic, just as Ms. Emo has mentioned, that we hear about the perception that this is a problem in some of our schools, or in our schools in whole. So anything we can do to make that better, I certainly would like to discuss and see done.
Sure, we'll be happy to bring you back some more information. And it's something that we've talked about for a while, and certainly the role of social media doesn't make it any easier on us. I know I've had 2 meetings or 2 conversations with Dr. Martin with middle school parents in the last 2 days, all information that was portrayed on social media outside of school. But it concerns the parents when they run across this and they see this and they come to the school asking for help, and certainly we provide that help and support for them. But the amount that we're seeing happening in the school by the infractions is very low. But I do think Ms. Emo is right. I think sometimes people are hesitant, especially students, but also some parents, to report it to us. So we keep encouraging them to do so. There's ways to do it anonymously. There's ways to do it face-to-face, and we will keep encouraging parents to do that, and
Because
students.
we can't, or our administration can't do anything about it unless they know about it. That's what
Absolutely.
I say to
I mean,
them all
there are
the
many
time.
times where, a parent will call me, and I'm sure the principals hear this a lot more than I do. My son's been bullied all year. Well, this is the first time we're hearing about it.
And it's May.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's May. So, we need to hear about it early, and we need to be able to address it early before it becomes an ongoing, because that's the definition of bullying, an ongoing series of incidents of, it's not just one incident. So, we need to be able to address it as soon as we can. So we would just encourage them to continue coming forward.
Yeah, the communication is critical.
Yep.
So, other questions or comments? All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Mundra.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Jones?
Sure. A few other items in the superintendent's report. First one is the next batch of policies. This is to receive information, and there's a summary of them that you have. I think it's like 12 policies, summary, as well as the full policies, and I think you have a hard copy of that beside your computer, if you'd like to look over that. And any questions that you have as you're reviewing those, feel free to contact me or contact Dr. Parker, who's point person for policy.
All right, discussion on this item. This is informational this evening. All right, thank you, Dr. Jones.
Thanks. The next item is information as well. This is the 1920 student fees. We have a summary of those fees as part of the boilerplate. We are trying to be consistent and meet program needs, but also keep fees reasonable. So you can see the fees that are there. Some of these fees increase or decrease because of national organizations that are requirements. Some of them are other opportunities that we just see to make some adjustments. And so we're happy to answer any of those questions that you may have. It looks like most of the changes for this year are at the middle school. And so this is information. If you have questions, let me or Dr. Alejandro know, and we'll be happy to address those, and we'll be bringing these back in June for approval so that we can get this information to parents over the summer. And then the last information is the students' rights and responsibilities, what we used to call the Student Code of Conduct. This is the new updated draft. We've updated attendance, we've updated disruptive behavior, made some other adjustments based on updates to the code and legislation that's been passed. Please review this, and you'll have plenty of time to review this. We'll be bringing this back to you in August for final approval.
All right. Initial questions or comments about this item? Mrs. English?
Yes, I had some, page 15, is that where I'm getting questions from constituents about clothing? And we also have elections coming up too. So where do I send that to a constituent who is interested in finding out if that's acceptable or not? Is that on page 15?
For clothing,
For clothing?
I'm looking now.
Okay. You know, with elections and then also the wearing the Confederate
Are you talking
flag.
about the campaign material? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, if we're doing president next
okay.
year, or,
Right,
and it's, you know, this is who you're voting for, is
Sorry, I
that
wanted to make sure I
acceptable?
understood your
Yeah.
question. All right.
As well as wearing the Confederate flag.
Page 14 and 15 have student code of conduct or student dress code on it, so yes, that is where that information is. There may be some other clarifying information in some of the schools' student handbook, but this is what's approved by the school board and what we follow. There's also policy, school board policy on political campaigning or political activity in schools. We can pull that policy number, I don't know it off the top of my head, but we'll get it to you. That kind of covers what can and can't be done as part of a political activity by staff. I don't know if it addresses students,
I think it addresses staff.
just
I think it
staff.
addresses
So I don't think there's
Oh.
anything specifically for students. So we'll check on that and get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, other questions or comments? All right, so this is informational in nature, and we have until August to
Yep.
address this.
Yep.
All right. All right, next item on our agenda is closed session. Ms. Zemel, could I ask you to read the certification, please, and make the motion necessary to take us into closed session?
Okay. Well, I make a motion, we go into closed session, but I'm still waiting for it to come up here. Oh, here we go. I recommend and make a motion to enter into closed session pursuant to Code 2.2-3711A1 to discuss the employment, resignation, and leave of specific employees. Pursuant to Code 2.2-3711A2 and A4 to discuss the expulsion and school placement of specific students. Code 2.2-3711A7 to consult with legal counsel and briefings by staff members pertaining to actual or probable litigation. And pursuant to Code 22.1-60.1 to discuss the evaluation of the division superintendent. Codes 2.2-3711, A1, A2, A4, A7, and 22.1-60.1.
Ms. Emel's recommendation is in the form of a motion. Is there a second to her motion?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please respond with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. We are in closed session. All right, good evening, folks. So procedurally, we're finishing our workshop at this point, so we're going to make a motion just a moment to come out of closed session. We'll read our certification, conclude our workshop, and then we'll move into the more formal part of the meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we re-enter open session.
Have a motion.
Whereas the Powhatan County School Board has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas Section 2.2-3712D of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by this school board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now, therefore be it resolved that the Powhatan School Board hereby certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification applies, and only public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. So the next item on our agenda is adjournment of the workshop. Is there a motion to adjourn the workshop for the evening?
So moved.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor of adjournment of our workshop, please respond with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. We are adjourned from our workshop. If you'll give us just a moment, we'll transfer our computers over and we'll begin our regular 7 o'clock meeting.